Well, good morning, councillors, and good morning to our staff. Welcome to those who are viewing this meeting via live stream. This is the September ordinary meeting for the Sunshine Coast Council, and I'd like to declare the meeting open and ask Councillor Landsberg to acknowledge the traditional custodians. If the chamber could be upstanding, please.
On behalf of Council, I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the Sunshine Coast local government area, the Kabi Kabi peoples of the coastal plains and the northern hinterland, and on whose traditional lands we gather today, and the Jinnabara peoples of the southern hinterland. We wish to pay respect to their elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge the important role First Nations people continue to play within the Sunshine Coast community.
Thank you, Councillor Landsberg. Please remain upstanding, and I'd like to invite Parish Priest Deborah Bird from the St George's Anglican Church, Maloney, to read the prayer. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me to join you this morning. Let us pray. God of community, we come with gratitude on our hearts this morning for the gifts of this region, its natural beauty, the goodness of people and culture, and the commitment of those who gather here today as council to this region. Guide the hearts and minds of this council toward all that might build up our communities in spirit and sustainability, and through these times of change and new invitation. Fill us with grace, reminding us that all we do and accomplish is for the common good, mindful of all whose lives we affect and whose voices struggle to be heard here. Help us to grow in peace and understanding of one another, instilling among us a spirit of gentleness, solidarity and generosity. May these deliberations today be calm, charitable and fruitful. May our tongues speak concisely, eloquently and hospitably. May our conclusions be prudent, our decisions be of genuine benefit to this region, pointing us toward the hope that is made when we work as one for the flourishing of these Sunshine Coast communities. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Deborah. Councillors, we might remain standing whilst the CEO provides a remembrance of Michelle Kane. Thank you. Emma?
Councillors, this morning we remember a valued team member of Sunshine Coast Council, someone who was inspired and was very dear to so many members of the team and member of the People and Culture team, Michelle Kane, who has passed away recently. We pass our condolences to Michelle's family and friends as we remember her today.
Thank you, Emma. Please be seated. Today, thank you. I have an apology from Councillor Johnston, who remains unwell. I'd ask that someone move the receipt of the minutes of the last ordinary meeting held on the 19th of August 2021 to be received and confirmed. Councillor Natoli, thank you. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Babarowski, thank you. All those in favour of receipt? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. There's no mayoral minute. Item 6 deals with conflict of interest, and I draw to your attention, councillors, that on the 12th of October 2020, amendments to the Local Government Act 2009 and Local Government Regulation 2012 came into force. The amendments include the new Chapter 5B, which sets out new legislative requirements for dealing with councillors' conflicts of interest in local government matters, and these arrangements will apply to how we manage such matters at this meeting. So in the event that you have a prescribed or declarable conflict, please raise that prior to the item being addressed. We have a presentation, and I'll call on Councillor O'Prey to provide the details. Thank you, Councillor O'Prey.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. What a great day it is to be doing a presentation too, I might add. And I'd like to welcome a lot of our staff into the chamber, Mr Mayor, to be in receipt of this award today. I'd just like to show the gallery what they will be receiving. But I'm pleased to present that the Sunshine Coast Airport Expansion Project has won the Award for Excellence in Construction as part of the Civil Contractors Federation of Queensland 2021 Earth Awards Series The project team comprised of Sunshine Coast Council, John Holland and Becca share the title of winner in the highest value category, project value greater than $75 million. The CCF Earth Awards are the most prestigious awards in civil infrastructure and have the specific aim of recognising outstanding work in construction and environmental excellence, which reflects the development and the use of the best technologies and practices by Australian civil contractors. It's a big sentence. The airport expansion project is a crucial piece of local infrastructure and will shape the future of tourism and travel for the Sunshine Coast. And as a side note, it's clearly a mile ahead of the singular biggest completed piece of infrastructure that this council has ever produced. The project team, Council, John Holland and Becca displayed formidable teamwork, innovation, safety, quality and project management to deliver this outstanding and award-winning achievement. Mr Mayor, councillors, please join me in congratulating the team, and I'd ask them to stand. I'm not sure if Ross is here, but Ross Ullman, yeah, of course he is. Jacinta Glover, David C, Jasmine Hodges, Chris Steele and Toby Quirk. Mr Mayor, in closing, I just want to say that this is a very big deal. This has been not only a big part of my life over the last 5 or 6 years, but certainly a big part of all the staff that have been here. And I want to thank all the councillors for all their decision making through pretty much the last decade and making sure that we've got one of the greatest airports in Australia. And again, in conclusion, I'd also like to thank our Executive Director, Tom Jamison, who has displayed incredible ethic. He's had efficiencies, his work has been excellent, he's been incredibly responsive, he's been my go-to man for the last 5 years, and at times has been humorous, well, a little bit humorous. Tries his best to be funny. But anyway, I just want to thank you, Tom, for all you do, and you do an amazing job, and we're very happy to have you on board. Thank you, and congratulations.
Yeah, go on, by all means. I'll get my mask on. How about a couple of you step forward? A couple of you step forward and I'll do it that way. That's it. Well done, everybody. That's Super. Thank you. Well done, everyone.
Mr Mayor, I just want to thank Council so much for the vision that they showed, as Councillor Prey just mentioned, over the last decade or more, and that then presented us with the opportunity to deliver an absolutely amazing and challenging project, which I've had a great team behind me, so thank you again.
Good on you, Ross. Can I have someone second Councillor O'Prea's? Thank you, Councillor Cox. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Great start. Rightio, item 8.1 is Budget Review 1, and I invite Isaac Pickerskill and Michael Costello to give us a presentation. Welcome, gentlemen. Okay, thanks, Michael. We're in your hands.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Morning and morning all. Just presenting the Budget Review 1, the first budget review of the 21-22 year. Just need to click up here. So the budget review is carryovers of operating and capital expenditure from last year to this financial year, and the budget principles that were adopted for the original budget of maintaining service levels set by Council aligned to the corporate plan, maintaining cash levels, maintain or decrease debt levels and achieve a sustainable operating result have been adhered to throughout the budget review. On our core operating result, so our core operating result, original budget was 22 million, decreases by 4.4 million through Budget Review 1, down to 17.7 million. you. Looking at our total position, so our total operating result, original budget was 18.8 million, decreases again by 4.4 million, down to 14.5 million. There's been an increase in capital revenues, and then there's been some increases in capital expenditure of projects that were carried over from last year to this year. The total capital program increases from original budget of 269 million up to 315 million. So just some of the significant adjustments in the operating result. Mosquito control program of 209 million, continuation of grant-funded projects of 2.2 million, and that's where revenue was received last year, and the remit of those falls into this year. The mass transit business case, a continuation of funding from last year to this year, and the major grants program. On the capital works, there's a carryover of the budget for the Sunshine Coast City Hall of 10.8 million, Lullaby Foreshore redevelopment of 4.9 million, and Yandina Creek upgrade of 2.3 million. Some transport corridor land acquisitions in Caloundra of 1 million and Brisbane Road of 9.2. Continue with the capital works program for our region shaping projects. The airport expansion, there's a carryover of $11.4 million of unspent funds from last year to this year. Major is land acquisitions and some environmental offsets. The required funding for loans decreases by 4 million, so we anticipated 269 million in total loans for the airport. That decreases by 4 million. Payment from Palisade due in June of next year, and a total projected budget of 334 million. In Richard City Centre, there's a carryover of 606,000 relating to contractual obligations within the Precinct 1, and additional 311,000 which will remain as a contingency to respond to any emerging issues in that precinct. The Minor Works Program, the Appendix B contains a listing of the projects for Council's consideration for the Minor Works Program for this year. And the recommendation, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Someone to move? Councillor Hungerford. Seconder, Councillor Natoli. Would you like to open, Councillor Hungerford?
Through you, Mr Mayor. Section 170 of the Local Government Regulation allows Council to amend its budget by resolution at any time before the end of the financial year. This report, as the budget review for 2021-2022, predominantly identifies works from the revised 2020-21 budget that were not completed as of the 30th of June 2021 and require funds to be carried forward to the 21-22 financial year. Now, Council's interim financial results as of the 30th of June 2021 reflects a positive $10.1 million operating result. That is excellent. This results in a budget result of $3 million. Council's financial statements indicate an operating deficit of $24 million due to the accounting treatment of early payment adjustment relating to Council's debt. To explain that is where, like with a homeowner, has to look at their mortgage and what the interest rate they're paying, and if it's not competitive, to look for a better rate. That's what we've done with our outstanding loans, some of them go back many years and at a higher interest rate. The break cost of that is where the 24 million comes from. But the interest savings over the remainder term of that loan replaces that several times over. That makes a significant saving for our ratepayers. If we do it on our home loans, well, when we do it for our finances as well, get the best interest rate possible. The financial impacts of COVID for 2019, for 2021 were 8.5 million. This is below the initial estimate of 12 million, predominantly due to an increase in revenue fees generated from development activity. Now, our capital revenues have increased 4.6 million from 101.6 million to 106.2 million. Capital expenditure increased by 46.3 million from 268.9 million to 315.2 million. And importantly, loan borrowings for 21-22 will decrease by 2 million from 98.4 million to 96.4 million. So to summarise, the adoption of the recommendation of this report will formally amend the 21-22 budget. The revised closing cash balance for 21-22 and the amendments to this budget review will increase the cash position by 1.8 million to 190.9 million. Loan borrowings will decrease 2 million. Now this is important because maintaining the unrestricted cash and core debt balances are two key principles for development of the 21-22 budget. These are paramount in maintaining our strong credit rating and our financial sustainability. But we've got headwinds going into this year. With delivering our projects, the shortage of materials and time cost delays are all expenses that we're going to have to absorb through the year. There may be the need to defer some projects or look at the timelines to give the best delivery of those projects and then the financial capabilities. So that will be one that we'll have to focus on through the year to get the best possible value out of those projects. And all the building industry is finding that at the moment. The supply of materials has been a constraint and the costs are going up. So we need to look at that with focus through the year to get good value. I commend this report to you, councillors. It's a good start to the year and we've got to focus on our way through.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. Any further speakers? Councillor Babrowski.
Thank you, Chair. Councillors, I wouldn't mind taking the opportunity just to acknowledge the amount of work that goes into some of the adjustments for the minor capital works program, which is considered as part of this review process, and assuming that this is supported today. I'm really delighted with the outcomes for the community of Landsborough. It's the master plan implementation receives a large injection of funds by this minor works adjustment, and as do a couple of other communities in Bell Vista for Canavan Gracie Park, an upgrade to some of the facilities there potentially, and also Baringa, one of our newer communities. So if I may be indulgent and ask you, councillors, to support the recommendation today, because there are 3 communities who are hanging off this. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Babrowski. If there are no further speakers, I'll ask Councillor Hungerford to close. Not necessary. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, Michael and Isaac. We'll move straight on to 8.2, which is the August 2021 Financial Performance Report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, so Council, the operating result for the end of August was $118.5 million, which is favourable to budget of $4.3 million. Revenue was above budget by $3.5 million, expenses below by $810,000. Some of the highlights in terms of revenue, development service applications and material change of use fees are above budget by $561,000. And Council also received land sales revenue for Lot 1A within the Richville City Centre. Expenses were also below budget of $810,000. The capital works program has progressed 12%, with a total expenditure of $32.2 million, and the core program's at 9.1%. Some of the key highlights is the procurement for the sealing of Citrus Roads out at Palmwoods is finalised, and construction is scheduled to be complete by December. And then the upgrade and refurbishment of the Nambour Aquatic Centre is on track for pending delivery of some materials from overseas, I believe. Council's cash at the end of August is $301.3 million, and our debt was $657 million, which is a slight reduction from last month as we made a debt redemption payment within August. And the recommendation is today is to receive and note the report titled August 2021 Financial Performance Report.
Thank you, Isaac. Happy to move. Councillor Hungerford, thank you. Councillor Natoli, seconder. I'd like to open, Councillor.
Some of the highlights have been covered, but I'll just cover the main important ones. Council has a positive operating result of $118.5 million, which is $4.3 million above the current budget as of the 31st of August. As of the 31st of August, $192.3 million operating revenue has been achieved, which is $3.5 million more than the current budget. Development service applications and material change of use fees are above budget by $561,000. And very pleasingly, Council has received land sales revenue for Lot 1A within the Maroochydore City Centre, which is causing a positive variance to budget. That's paying down the debt, because Walkers are taking over the rest of the development. So it's a very excellent result from Maroochydore City Centre. As of August 2021, 32.3 million of the 268.9 million capital works program was financially expended, and that's very pleasing at this point when we've got such supply issues and getting contracts in place and works actually delivered on the ground. That's an excellent result in this climate. The core capital program has progressed 9.1% of budget with an actual spend of 17.2 million. And importantly, several key tracks and trails have progressed through the planning stage. These include Glasshouse Mountains Regional Trail, Buderim Palmwoods Heritage Trail, and Gardeners Fall Trail at Caloundra from Town Reserve Trail. All those social impacts and projects we've got out there just as important as the big ones. Everything's important as far as we're concerned. Council's 23.3 million road resurfacing and rehabilitation program has progressed 6% for August with a total expenditure of 1.4 million. I'm sure Winston will be happy with this one, but he's not here today because he's still unwell. Procurement of the sealing and upgrade of Citrus Road Palmwoods has finalised with construction scheduled to be complete by December 2021. That's a very pleasing one for our rural communities. And as stated before, Council's cash at the 31st of August is 301.3 million and our debt is 657 million, but that will reduce with repayments we're making in the near future. So we've got all our finances in a very stable place and we're going to need that into the future. And I'm sure we can get there because I believe that with the financial headwinds we've got at the moment and the effects of COVID having on the state and Commonwealth governments, is going to impact into the future, and we're getting ourselves in a strong position to be able to ride that through. And that's very pleasing. So I commend this to you, councillors. Another excellent result, and let's keep on the target. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. Any further speakers? Put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, Isaac and Michael. We're going to move to item 8.3, which is the rebate policy for infrastructure charges for not-for-profit organisations. Councillor Landsberg.
I, Councillor Terry Landsberg, notified that I have a declarable conflict of interest in item 8.3, rebate policy for infrastructure charges for not-for-profit organisations to be considered at the ordinary meeting on the 16th of September 2021, as I am a member and also the President of the Wind and Sea Border Riders Club. This report seeks Council's endorsement of a policy position which, depending on Council's decision, may impact the Wind and Sea Border Riders Club as an eligible organisation. For that, I will exclude myself from the meeting while this matter is being discussed and the vote is taken.
Thank you, Councillor Landsberg. Councillor O'Prey.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I too have a declarable conflict of interest in item 8.3, the rebate policy for infrastructure charges for non-for-profit organisations to be considered at the ordinary meeting on 16 September 21, as I'm an executive board member and the life member of the Maroochydore Surf Lifesaving Club. This report seeks Council's endorsement for a policy position which, depending on Council's decision, may impact the Maroochydore Surf Lifesaving Club as an eligible organisation. I will exclude myself from the meeting while this matter is being discussed and the vote is taken. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor O'Prey. Okay, we'll welcome Nick Cooney for the presentation. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Good morning, councillors. This report addresses a revised rebate policy for infrastructure charges for not-for-profit organisations. The policy provides support to eligible community organisations that are undertaking development that serves the community by reducing the financial burden of the development through rebates in the infrastructure charges. The current policy has been in place since 2009, providing relief from infrastructure charges to those organisations where they provide qualifying community service projects. The rebates are funded from general revenue, which provides the equivalent rebate sum to infrastructure charges reserves. This retains Council's ability to fund growth infrastructure. This policy review is timely, it provides clarity on eligibility and directs that eligibility to best effect. The current policy allows a 100% rebate where the purpose of development is to construct new or extended community service, including special accommodation, sporting, recreational, life-saving facilities in compliance with the policy. It permits a 30% rebate for social, entertainment, gaming or liquor facilities component of the development on the basis that some of the profits generated from the commercial operations are directed towards the community, recreational or life-saving functions of the organisation. The current policy also provides a rebate for non-state schools for construction of new or extended educational facilities. And it allows for religious organisations a 100% rebate for community, youth or meeting facilities where those facilities are available to the general community and are non-denominational in their application and use. No rebate currently applies for places of worship. So the proposed changes to that policy. Non-state schools, it's proposed that they are no longer included as eligible community organisations as a ministerial designation process now applies. This came about following successful lobbying by non-state schools to be given exemption from paying infrastructure charges in line with the exemption that applies to state schools. The new policy proposes the removal of the club's development eligibility, which provides self-funding capability through commercial operations or liquor licences. It's considered that the development by clubs to provide or extend premises for gaming, liquor sales and or dining should not qualify for the rebate, as the purpose is a commercially based investment capable of generating revenue and contributing to the required supporting trunk infrastructure. Where a club provides non-commercial development, the rebate applies. Further, it's recognised that organisations registered with the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profits Commission are to be included as eligible, and it's not just now a qualification under the Australian Taxation Office. Life-saving clubs are still included, but they're not identified separately, and they're just included with community sporting or recreation organisations. And lastly, clarity of the operation of the policy and application process is now provided, with the policy including a standardised application form and a rebate assessment guide. These are provided as appendices A and B within the policy. This table provides a breakdown of the level of support provided to not-for-profit organisations over about a 10-year period. The current average annual rebate is around $600,000. With the removal of the gaming and liquor licence activities and non-state schools eligibility, it's envisaged that the average annual rebate will reduce to around $400,000. This is still a significant level of support to not-for-profit organisations and could grow as the coast grows. Further, support for social housing may well see increased demand for assistance, going by recent and likely extended trends. A benefit of the rebate policy is that it allows for organisations to develop their business plans with certainty that the rebate will be available for qualifying projects. So, councillors, the recommendation in the report is as provided on the screen.
Thank you, Nick. Someone to move? Councillor Dixon, seconded Councillor Hungerford. Would you like to open, Councillor Dixon?
Yes, I would, Mr Mayor. Firstly, full support for the policy. I supported the original policy in 2009 and obviously support this. Good to hear that we're taking out those who have liquor licences and gambling machines on the premises. I don't think council should be using ratepayer dollars to prop up any local group, business, whatever it is, that has liquor licensing and gambling on the premises. So that's a good move. Probably my only question, if I can, through the Mayor, is to Councillor Law. I know last month at the previous meeting we deferred this report so you could have some discussions with a local community group. I thought for the public gallery it might be nice to update them on where you got to.
Thank you, Councillor Law.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. Thanks for the follow-up, Councillor Christian. And I can confirm that the reasons for the deferral at the last meeting, those meetings have taken place with the community organisation, with the support from Nick Cooney and his team, and all matters have been resolved satisfactorily, and the organisation is able to move ahead with the certainty and clarity that Nick has alluded to today. So really good outcome, very grateful for our actions at the last meeting last month, and I'm very happy to support this revised policy going through today, and I will certainly be supporting it. Thanks for the question.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillor Hungerford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council has a policy for providing relief from infrastructure charges for not-for-profit organisations since 2009. Since this time, around $6 million in rebates have been provided to eligible organisations, providing tangible to those organisations in delivering community service-based developments. While the policy has been working well, serving its purpose in assisting non-for-profits deliver for the community, it is timely to update the policy for clarity and relevance. The main changes to eligibility stem from 1, an adjustment to the state government legislation relating to non-state schools, and 2, recognition that developments including a gaming or liquor licence component do not require assistance under this policy. To clarify this, it's only that element of the application that will not receive the subsidy. Any other part of the application that gives a community-based outcome, and quite rightly so, ratepayers' funds shouldn't be used for commercial outcomes, it should be community outcomes. This clarity has been put in there, it's a good clarity. Mr. Kearney? So the proposed revised policy retains the initial spirit of intent to support non-for-profit organisations, providing community service outcomes that are worthy of continued community support. And today I ask you councillors to support this because this is what it achieves and gives that certainty to those groups and that support in delivering community outcomes. And that's what we need to continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. If there are no further speakers, I'll go back to Councillor Natali.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think out of all of this, we want to clarify that these organisations that do have liquor licences and have expanded over years to provide, obviously, more revenue to be sustainable and to be able to provide the services that they give to their community. So in one sense, it sort of grates a little bit with me because I see these organisations as the work and holistically that they do within there. And you look at Circle Life Savings, the amount of work that they do in terms of protecting people, their lives, to be able to give us the opportunity to have a wonderful tourism without the records of people drowning on the beaches and without those sorts of clubs and the support. And they can't do it without liquor licensing. They can't do it without generating further revenue in most cases. And those clubs that don't have those often are the ones that are really struggling to be able to keep up with the services and demands and new equipment and so forth. So it does, in one sense, sometimes grate with me when I look at and trying to, understand that one part we want them to provide these services and we're grateful for what they do, but then on the other side, we want to put a caveat over the way that they actually manage their businesses. So I'll still support this today, but I just want to put it on the record that I still feel that, in terms of our overall organisations, that we want to still show that we are incredibly supportive of the work that they do, grateful for what they do for us as a community, and we should never really be, targeting an element of what they've done. Successful clubs should be congratulated for taking the risks, taking the opportunities to grow, and ultimately with that, I know their services to the community has grown as well.
Thank you, Councillor Natali. Councillor Babarowski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I just wanted to make a distinction, or I'd like to see whether Nick could make a distinction between the support we would offer to an organisation that may wish to expand, non-profit, and seek for some discount off the infrastructure charges, as opposed to the same group who would be building an extension for a commercial activity, essentially a commercial activity. Could you make the distinction between those two things? Because this is not blanket lack of support for organisations that do have some commercial activities, if I'm reading it correctly.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. If I use an example to say a particular club that put in a development application could have two components in it. One could be for gaming liquor licence area, and with that could also be a club members' room, training areas for youth in athletics and things like that. So as the policy is proposed, they'd be eligible for the rebate only in the area that didn't have gaming and liquor licensing. So the distinguishing component is that the gaming and liquor licence area that is fully commercial doesn't have a direct community service activity attached to it. The rest of the policy requires that the activity be a community service. So it brings back the clarity across the whole of the policy. The community service component by the same club would attract 100% rebate. The gaming and liquor licence component would not attract any rebate. So it still recognises all the good work that a particular club does, but it purely then categorises community service component against a gaming and liquor licence component. I hope that answers that.
Thank you. No further speakers. Go back to Councillor Dixon to close. No need to close. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kearney. Item 8.4 is the application of national competition policy and other activities for 21-22. And I invite Mr. Skillon and Mr. Crook to give us a presentation. Okay, just hold 1 second while we get our other two councillors back. Someone's going to round them up. Gentlemen, please proceed.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councillors. You recall that in June of this year, we brought to this forum the National Competition Policy for its annual review. At the conclusion of that meeting, it was determined that we would consider the two extra business activities that we're developing during the course of the last year or two and present those to the meeting of September as we are now. The two matters that we were to consider was the off-street parking as we'd moved to commission the Brisbane Road car park, and we're looking at further development of further car parks across the region. And the second was also the consideration of festivals as a collective rather than individually considering events. The application of the policy has two distinct arms to it. One is if a matter was to be a significant business activity, in which case we must apply the competitive neutrality principle to reform that activity unless a business benefit assessment shows that the benefit of applying the competitive neutrality will not outweigh the cost of doing so. The second applies to business activities. Council must consider whether or not to apply the Code of Competitive Conduct to those which are not significant business activities which meet a prescribed expenditure threshold. In terms of application, what that means is that Council considers whether it conducts a business activity. In these instances, applying to off-street parking and festivals, we would need to consider if we are trading in those goods or services. If the answer to that is determined as yes, you then consider a threshold test. If the expenditure for those matters is more than $9.7 million, it qualifies as significant business activity. If it is not up to the $9.7 million but is more than $340,000, then it would be defined as a prescribed business activity. In considering off-street parking, we trade in off-street parking, so the first threshold test is that business activity is applied, considered yes. At this point in time, in applying the threshold value test, does it get to an expenditure of more than $9.7 million? The answer to that is currently no. However, it is more than the $340,000. That has the matter determined as being a prescribed business activity. The consideration then is whether to apply the Code of Competitive Conduct, which would see us either move towards competitive neutrality principles, pricing provisions or financial reporting, or decide to not apply the code, in which case we would provide a list of reasons for not applying the code. Those reasons that we're proposing currently are contained within the report. Importantly, in determining what the expenditure was, you need to consider the list of what the costs are associated with it. So it includes the operational cost, admin costs, the depreciation, and those listed on the left-hand side. The implications to applying that to off-street parking in this instance would result in increased parking charges, and it would require us to set a price to full cost recovery over the next 5 years. Excuse me. In considering festivals, is it a business activity? Do we trade in it? The answer to that is yes. In terms of then the threshold test, we do not trade in $9.7 million worth of expenditure for them, but it is north of $340,000. The result again is to apply the code as we would with off-street parking, or to decide not to apply the code. Again, if the decision is not to apply the code, then in that instance we need to list the reasons why we wouldn't, and again the proposed reasons are contained within the report. In considering the pricing provisions and what would apply, you need to consider the same costs, although they will be different obviously to off-street parking. The result again is however similar. It would result in increased ticket prices by setting a price path to full recovery over the next 5 years. Again, that does not mean every ticket must go up, but the business model would require the application of the policy or the competitive neutrality principles in order to determine what the pricing pathway to full cost recovery would be. Thank you.
Thank you. Have someone move the report? Councillor Hungerford, thank you. Seconded, Councillor O'Prey, thank you. Would you like to open, Councillor Hungerford?
Mr. Mayor, it's very clear under the competition policy, you've got to be in direct competition with someone else. And that's why these two we've decided at this point in time, we're only comparing to ourselves. So what are you achieving? Because you're not in direct competition. That could change in the future, and that's why each year we review this every year to reassess where we are. Because if we're only doing it to applying it to ourselves, and in those areas where we're providing a community outcome, the benefit means we have to put an increased cost on that, which reduces the benefit of the community outcome. If we had other things come in there that were competing with us in the future, we'd relook at this. And that's why we do it on an annual basis. But the important thing is, the confirmation that Council's application of National Competition Policy Reform is compliant with the Local Government Act 2009 and the Local Government Regulation 2012 for the following: the waste resources management, the holiday parks, the quarries and the international broadband submarine cable network. I've already said we're applying that correctly. These two are the off-street parking and festivals. And clearly we see there that we're not really in that space of being in direct competition at this point in time. So it would be unrealistic to apply the competition policy to ourselves. And it noted that council officers have considered the feedback provided from councillors and from external lawyers in preparing this report. So we're completely compliant and we're making a proper assessment of this, and we'll do that each year to make sure that we're in that space. So councillors, I put it to you, this is very balanced, well researched and well placed for our community, and I support this today and I ask you to as well.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. Councillor Landsberg.
Thank you, through the Chair. And I was just going to go down that road, Councillor Ted, just about into the future, Paul, if we see other private parking operators come into the Sunshine Coast, like Wilson's, that want to actually start supplying paid parking or multi-deck parking. I mean, obviously the multi-deck was built for a need, and we saw that need probably many, many years ago. In the current climate, it's obviously it's an effect that it's not being utilised to its full capacity, but I'm sure that will be coming once we move through this current climate and the effects of the pandemic. But this has been brought around, and obviously with legislation that we have to touch on this each year through the NCP. And I did put a question around to the other councillors and touching on the festivals in regards to any complaints that we did receive over board to the actual national competition regulator, and we hadn't. But it's undoubtable that the broad community support and the amazing impact that this CMF has had for Caloundra and the broader region. I've had numerous letters sent to me quickly over the last couple of weeks when this item has come up, and in talking in response and support of the music festival, and obviously talking to other fellow councillors how we're going to move forward in the future and look at collaborating with other private entities as well. So yeah, I'm happy to support the council's recommendations today, and thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lansberg. Councillor Natali.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very grateful that you've gone back and reviewed this policy. I could not support it when it was first mooted, but the fact that car parking has been reviewed, I think, is a really good outcome. I concur with Councillor Hungerford that until there's real competition, that we shouldn't be wasting our time and efforts in trying to deal with a report other than to recognise that it may at some point in the future be triggered. That brings to an interesting point about competition and what will trigger that, because really, to me, parking is very specific about a precinct, and it's that precinct that if there was a competitor within a precinct, like if you think of Mooloolaba, for instance, where would the precinct boundary be before you wouldn't really trigger that? Because no one's going to walk, 2 kilometres or 3 kilometres from that park and can consider that as competitive. It was within a few hundred metres, or maybe even half a kilometre or a kilometre, maybe. And Maroochydore should be another classic example where we should probably define the boundaries of where we would think if there was a competitor, we'd go in and do more work. Outside of that boundary, I wouldn't even be concerned that we'd even be triggering the competition aspect of that. So that to me, I think is something that we could possibly use as a tool and guide in future, just to be able to say, quick tick and click, yes, it's in that zone, we should be looking at this even further. If it's outside that zone, don't even bother. Like, the hospital and the airport are not relevant to any car parking in Mooloolaba or Maroochydore. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Natali. Councillor Law.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of questions, if I may. There's been some comments that the festival space is not competitive. I need to challenge that. The festival environment is extremely competitive and relies on significant grant funding from all types of places, both private and government funding. The question I have is just to clarify with you that we have considered the competitive nature of the festival market in our decisions around applying the policy to festivals.
Through the Chair, the answer is yes, we have. And you'll note in each of the reasons for both the off-street parking and the festivals is that we didn't say there was no competition. It is said it's noted to be limited. I agree, I'm jumping around a little bit, but I agree with Councillor Natali's position on the practical application of looking at parking here versus parking at the airport. And while I personally agree with it entirely, the legislation requires us to look at it holistically across the region. You then break it down into that compartmentalised as part of your reason for not applying it, but you can't start with we don't have a competition here. So that's where we've got to in determining that it's limited. And there's also the opinion of other people. Some people might believe that they are in competition with us. We can still choose not to apply the code in that instance, and we have that ground of acknowledging that there could be considered some competition. We have considered that, and the ultimate recommendation is still not to apply the code.
Thank you for the answer, and I think we're not quite in agreement around whether or not it's limited competition, but I'll leave that to the side. in regard of are people in support of or not in support of, I think there's a lot of discourse and disagreement around that in terms of supporting the festival or not. One of the things that would be extremely helpful is to provide some clarity and openness around the financial reporting. What would be the difference between applying the code and not applying the code to our financial reporting on specifically the Caloundra Music Festival?
Through the chair, I would have to, I can answer some of that, councillor. Some of it is actually the business model that the CMF or the festivals generally are applying. So the implications of applying the code would see a change or a need to consider in how ticket pricing would change. There would need to be an increase in ticket pricing somewhere, somehow. And I'm not in a position to say which events or parts of which events that would apply to. That would be a business decision. But the ultimate outcome of it then is to ensure that the expenditure for putting on the event is covered by the revenue sources that come from the event. So you would be naturally wanting or needing to see an increase in that revenue so that the effect would be you would get to almost an effective operating model or an efficient operating model that was surviving on its own merits and then probably not requiring, say, council grant or support for the event.
Okay, thank you. Final question at the moment, I reserve the right to speak later. It mentions that we have to achieve the ticketing and the revenue streams over a 5-year period.
Yes.
This may be outside of your remit, so I'm happy for you to take it on notice. When might if applying this to festivals, when might it be apparent that it is possible to have a revenue break even on the festivals? Would that be possible in 5 years?
Through the chair, I would have to take it on. I could make a few comments about it, and that is, if you're applying the code, then it's 5 years is the maximum time you've got to get there. The legislation provides that window of opportunity for you for council to step its way to achieving that. It's not a choice beyond that. You're either there or you're running an event that is applying full cost pricing, so ticketing and the like is at it, but it's still not selling more tickets than the revenue totally raised against the expenditure. So you're running your event at a loss, but realising that after the event, which as a business proposition naturally to be avoided. I can't then comment on how the business model would be applied to step towards the 5-year incremental process of getting there, but happy to take it on notice.
All right, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillor Suarez.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. May I make a request that I be seated while I ask questions? I'm just feeling a little lightheaded.
Sure, that's fine.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. I actually have a question for Terry. I noted Councillor Lansberg. I noted his additional information request. And in reading that, the competitive neutrality complaints process is it says here, mechanism designed to deal with allegations of non-compliance by council business activities with competitive neutrality principles. The Caloundra Music Festival has not previously been recognised as a council business activity, nor has it had competitive neutrality principles applied to it. So of course the answer has to be that there's been zero complaints, formal complaints lodged against it. I just wanted to make that clarification. Perhaps the better question, if you wanted to go down that route, Councillor Lansberg, would have been to ask, have there been any CRMs or complaints about the festival rather than formal complaints? Did you want to comment on that, Terry?
Is it best if the CEO comments on that, perhaps? Well, and maybe you after that.
I might just comment on that. A business activity or any activity of the council doesn't actually have to be defined as that for someone to make a complaint under the national competition policy. So it could be possible that any of our activities, someone could refer a formal complaint to that activity under this Act if they required it. So that's not strictly true. Something doesn't have to be defined under this to allow someone to make a formal complaint through that process.
Okay, I was just reading the information that was supplied in the additional information, and that was my understanding of it. And the reason I raised that, Terry, is, Councillor Landsberg, is because Councillor Law did also question whether or not festivals was a competitive environment, and I tend to agree with Councillor Law that it is a competitive space, and that's the reason why I raised that one.
So it's just, I'll pause there. Did you want to make any comment, Councillor Landsberg, or were you? Okay, fine.
Thank you. I've made it clear in workshops before that I disagree with the reasons not to apply national competition policy to festivals, and I also struggle with having Horizon and Caloundra Music Festival lumped together when considering this, because I think they're quite separate. So I might just ask some questions about the reasons to not apply Code of Competitive Conduct. Reason number one was the Sunshine Coast Arts Plan and how festivals align with that. In that plan, do you know how many actions specifically mention Horizon or Caloundra Music Festival?
Through the chair, no.
So, reading through that the other day, Horizon specifically mentioned twice, and Caloundra Music Festival is not mentioned throughout the document. Artists throughout the region are mentioned multiple times. Reason number two was applying the code would detrimentally impact the ability of all ages and diversities to attend and enjoy such cultural and community events. We talked about ticket price, increasing ticket pricing, increasing alcohol sales, or reducing costs would change the viability and nature of the event. And attraction to patrons in attending is challenged. It's quite a broad statement, but you defined it a little further in matters that council would need to consider, saying a significant number of tickets are sold to children, youths and pensioners. Do you know what that percentage is of tickets for the Caloundra Music Festival?
Through the chair, that information was contained in the extra additional information.
Not the actual percentage in the additional information.
The percentage then.
It just said a significant amount.
Yes.
The only information that I had to have a look at was the February 2019 ordinary meeting agenda papers, which had a report attached to it, and just I had to do a little bit of guesswork with that, but I'm guessing around 9% for those three groups in terms of ticket sales, so I wouldn't really call that significant.
Through the chair, 9% in total, or 9% of each of those groups?
9% in total. So if I grab the report from February 2019, in the back there is, well, there's information throughout the agenda report, but throughout the back there's an attachment as well, which is the IER CMF report for 2018. And there's a bit of information in there that separates the age groups in terms of demographic profile of people attending the event. So I sort of took that and did a bit of guesswork in terms of the amount of tickets sales for those three groups. And then it said that for-profit festivals target a specific demographic. Can you explain what the specific demographic is?
Through the chair, the answers to that have been prepared in a combination of seeking them from the branches, particularly those that were involved in running, depending on which one you're asking. In the case of the CMF, the questions are asked through Economic Development Branch, so I can get an answer for you for that. But the particular demographic, in my view, from collecting that information, was the very broad family nature that the event was created to invite.
Okay, I assumed that was possibly the answer, but I suppose for-profit festivals like Woodford Folk Festival, Mullaney Music Festival and the Sunshine Sounds Festival would probably disagree with that statement because they are family-friendly festivals that are run for-profit. And then there was also a comment about the entertainment bill might have purely been based around popular artists instead of emerging local artists. I just want clarification around the word entertainment bill. Is that the billing or the booking of bands, or is it that the cost of booking those bands?
Through the chair, I took it to be the latter.
The cost of booking the bands?
Yes.
So we've got a really good breakdown that was provided for the CMF, which showed that the mix of local artists is approximately 50%, which is awesome. And I myself have seen a number of local bands grow through playing at the Caloundra Music Festival and going forward. But there's no costs associated with what we're paying local bands and what we're paying non-local bands or popular artists. Reason number 5, the private sector are not interested in delivering a festival similar to Caloundra or Horizon. It states that a number of private operators have approached council. How many operators have approached council and have any approached us separately for Horizon or separately for Caloundra Music?
Through the chair, in relation to the CMF over the years, I am aware of 3, but there could be more than that. Had a limited amount of involvement about 3 years ago with discussions with 2 of them. In relation to Horizon, I can't answer that question, but I'm happy to get an answer for you.
Okay. And can you just repeat why the private interest failed to be realised? Why they wouldn't take on the Caloundra Music Festival?
Through the chair, ultimately that was I can only tell you the part that I'm aware of, but they weren't telling us why they were doing it. They were, the result of the engagement with them was that they ceased to be interested in doing it. And my very general understanding of how that what transpired from that was that they, concerned with the size of the area, the ability to hold an event with the numbers that they would require, and while retaining, if we were to expect them to retain the type of event that family-friendly event that it is.
Okay. So the private sector say they can't make the festival work, and the limited information I have on CMF financials is based on the 2019 February report.
Councillor, can I just arrange to get an extension for you?
It's
Someone
still
happy
questions, sir.
Oh, sorry, my apologies.
Sir,
sorry, my apologies.
Mr. Mayor,
Great.
back in the military.
We're back.
The private sector say that they can't make the festival work, but from the limited information on the financials of the Caloundra Music Festivals, I can't see that it's ever made a profit, yet we've delivered it for 13 years. In the February report, it also stated that council's continued funding provision would provide the opportunity to further improve the festival's bottom line. However, the opposite is occurring, and the operating loss has been increasing. So in those 13 years, what has council done to try and improve that bottom line?
Through the chair, I'm sorry, because that's not a question that I can answer on the basis of the report is about our application on this year of the National Competition Policy. I'm not aware of the business model or the detail of the business model that has got us to this point over any number of years. The report is, is addressing festivals collectively and our application of the National Competition Policy. I am aware that there's been a commitment from Council to the Caloundra Music Festival, which I believe extends up to the end of 2022. The opportunity then, I'm assuming fairly soonly, within the next 12 months, to address exactly those questions and contribute to them, I think is coming, but it's not something that I can answer from here.
Okay, I'll take that on board, and I probably am drawing a bit of a longer bow with the reason, number 5, in terms of the private sector are not interested in delivering, and I'll take that up when we have a review of the Caloundra Music Festival in the first term of next year. Reason number 6, CMF pricing enables a diverse range of ages and diversities above and beyond other family-friendly festivals. So Mullaney, I mentioned those other festivals before, Mullaney, Sunshine Sounds and Buskers by the Lake are all cheaper. So how are they not enabling the same ages and diversities as the Caloundra Music Festival?
Through the chair, there needs to be, we need to be aware that merely because there is another event and the ticketing is different isn't to say that can't apply. That can apply to those as well. So they have got a particular business model that they are operating a particular way, and that business model has them inviting particular acts, putting on a particular event over a particular period of time. So that's where we get to that discussion about, are we really competition one against the other? They're both surviving. So, but this one is surviving by support from council in this instance, and it is though for that reason that this recommendation, this reason comes to this forum as one of the reasons not to apply the national competition policy.
Yes, I understand that, and as I said, I disagree with the reasons, and I'm just trying to clarify where I'm having conflict with the rationale for the reasons to not apply the competition policy, whether or not you can give me anything to change my mind on that. And so far, that response doesn't.
Yeah, sure.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Same reason again, it also says generating economic benefit. It absolutely does, there's no argument there. But the additional information clarified, I asked for to clarify economic benefits outside of Caloundra, and that was really great too. It's supporting a lot of local businesses outside of the area. However, the February 2019 ordinary meeting papers also attach the summary of a report and refers to the majority of the benefits as Caloundra slant the Sunshine Coast. Caloundra is not the same as the Sunshine Coast, and I know that's a previous report. I just want to make that clarification. And it mentions Caloundra specifically as, in terms of Caloundra Group's Caloundra Chamber of Commerce, Downtown Caloundra Task Force, Caloundra Primary School raising 40 grand, and the legacy infrastructure to Kings Beach. So would it be fair to say the economic benefits are largely felt by Caloundra and the surrounding suburbs rather than the whole of the region?
Through the chair, I think the answer to that is probably more so. I imagine if you had a type of heat map, it would start in central Caloundra and head mainly north. I can't see too much south, but yes, I think that's reasonable.
Okay, I'll leave the questions there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Landsberg, you have a question?
I can make a comment.
No, you've already
asked a question.
You've already spoken, so
okay.
You'll need to, after, if you want clarification, something will need to be via a question to somebody else.
I can comment once we go into move the motion. Is that right?
You can close. Sorry, no. This motion was moved by Councillor Hungerford, so your only option, given you've already spoken, is to ask questions.
I'd just like to ask a question to Councillor Maria. Do you really understand the amount of community benefit that this festival brings to Caloundra? The economic benefit is undoubted in the papers, and it shows the amazing support. I just want to understand the rationale of questioning applying the NCP to a successful festival that has built its reputation, and now it seems to be being drawn apart or dragged down by especially some aggressive social media comments by
Councillor, you're probably drifting into commentary,
sorry,
but
just understanding why you want to go against a festival that has built its reputation and a major events team in council that have actually been, commend them on the work they've done, And the figures quoted in the media...
Councillor, you're drifting on.
All right, I'm
again.
sorry.
I'm going to go to Councillor Suarez to answer.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Landsberg. Yes, I absolutely understand how great a festival it is. I've attended a number of times. I've danced in puddles in sudden thunderstorms there. I've made many great memories at that festival. Yes, I understand the economic benefits to Caloundra are great, but this is being funded from general rates, and the benefits are going to Caloundra. And ratepayers across the whole of the region are funding this event. And that's why I'm asking these questions about the Caloundra Music Festival, because if we are funding this event and the benefits are to be across the broader region, we should review this festival to make sure that that's occurring. That's why I'm asking the questions.
Okay, I'm going to go to that was the only question you had, Councillor?
And with that, Councillor Marie, you should be reviewing everything else like the surf lifesaving titles, the Ironman events we support, the other sporting... I know, different with festivals, but yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Landsberg.
Mr Mayor, if I can reply to that, if it's as strange as a question, why am I looking at the Caloundra Music Festival instead of the surf lifesaving titles? The surf lifesaving titles are driven by an outside organisation and not driven by council, and that's why.
Okay, let me...
Stay with roads, rates and rubbish. Basically, we shouldn't be getting...
No, Councillor, no, please don't make any unnecessary comments. I'm going to go to Councillor Cox and Councillor O'Prey.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. I'll try and keep this on topic with the report that's here in front of us today. I certainly am very supportive of the recommendations of the four being the NCP applied to and us sort of not including the off-street parking and the festivals. I put on my light to have a say because of the conversation that's just been underway, and I just wanted to let Councillor Maria know that yes, it is called the Caloundra Music Festival, and certainly there would be significant benefits to the immediate Caloundra area, but I've got an email here sent to me by Mr Holmes, who's got a production company. He's a constituent of Division 3. He has his business based in Alexandra Headlands, and I'll just read a couple of lines from his email which he has sent me. Events like the Caloundra Music Festival have enabled our business to buy locally on the Sunshine Coast and continue to employ new staff here as well. Our most recent vehicle purchase was made through Cricks. Even though there were cheaper options available, we committed to supporting local businesses. Growth through festival and other events here have locally led to work at other venues like schools, churches on the Sunshine Coast, which is enabling the expansion of their office, employment, and they are excited about the future growth of business here in my hometown. We value Council's commitment to events like the Caloundra Music Festival, which also promote and encourage tourism, all part of a thriving economy for the Sunshine Coast. So that's from someone that's directly involved with the events on the Sunshine Coast. But as I said, I want to keep it with the report that's here in front of us. And for me, point 6 up on screen there is very relevant to the topic that we're talking about with festivals. And I just think, having read the additional information from the responses to questions you've asked, Councillor, and as well as Councillor Landsberg, I've got every confidence that we're on the right task, because the information here does not really give me any reason to divert my support from the report that's here in front of us today. And I just encourage councillors to keep this open, not drill down into the specifics, because it is festivals broadly, Horizon, as well as CMF, and yeah, I will be supporting this here today.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor O'Prey.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Two questions, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, are you aware that the Caloundra Music Festival has an enormous history in Sunshine Coast, even though it's only 12 or 13 years of age, and that has brought enormous benefits to the entire region of the Sunshine Coast? My world's been surrounded by events and bringing them to the region, the entire region, and I've seen firsthand the benefits that all our events and all our festivals have done for the entire Sunshine Coast. Mr Mayor, are you aware that the opportunities for businesses, small businesses across the entire region to become contractors for events such as the Caloundra Music Festival in all divisions across the Sunshine Coast have got an opportunity to make a ton of money, and they do every year. I know in my division, Division 8, there are beneficiaries to the Caloundra Music Festival. In fact, quite a lot of people come to the Caloundra Music Festival as part of their holiday, and they also spend their money in Maroochydore or on the North Shore. It does happen all the time. My other question, are you aware, Mr Mayor? Yep, thank you. So my second question was to Councillor Terry, the Divisional Councillor for Division 2, the Caloundra Music Festival area. I'd really like to know what the Divisional Councillor, the new Divisional Councillor, has got to say about the economic benefit for the region and also for the Caloundra specific region. I know that Councillor Tim, for many, many years, was a huge supporter of the CMF. He saw the benefits for his immediate patch, and he saw the benefits for the entire region. You've got to remember that we started the Caloundra Music Festival because there was a gap in the market. People were begging for music festivals on the Sunshine Coast 12, 13 years ago, and we didn't have anything on offer. So Council stepped up to the plate and we created the Caloundra Music Festival. So I'd really like to know what Councillor, the Divisional Councillor for number 2 would like to say about that. Thank you. That's my second question.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Jason. And during the proceedings of the questioning, I didn't have the opportunity to read some other various letters that were sent through to me in support and of other contractors that have taken on positions with the CMF and relocated their businesses here to Caloundra as well. And just quickly, some contractors that are engaged in this year's CMF. We have them security from Didillabar, fencing from Landsborough, waste management from Coolum, bar operations Glenview, marketing promotion Maroochydore. This CMF fills the gap for reaching out to the broader community in the Sunshine Coast. The opportunity for people with disabilities, with young children to visit this event is just incredible. And I just also like to say that an award-winning event like this doesn't come with, obviously, its detractors for it. And I just see that we should continue to support it. It's something that I'm extremely proud to be representing Caloundra for this music festival, but it is up for review after this year. And we will look at collaborating, if we can improve those collaborations with other event holders on the Sunshine Coast, whether we look at another weekend, if it's not on a long weekend, to try and accommodate that as well. But yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor Jason. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Landsberg. Councillor Law.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. I think Councillor Terry has just answered my question around the review. So my question is just to clarify, in 2019, the next 3 years were laid out for CMF, and that will conclude at the end of next year. Is that the end of next calendar year or next financial year?
Excuse me, Councillor.
Mr Laverde is going to provide a response. Thank you.
Through you, Mr Mayor, it's the end of the 2022 event, so we'll look to get a report to Council in the first quarter of 2022, so there's plenty of lead time if there's a decision to change the festival for the years after the 2022 calendar year festival.
Okay, thank you. So with that, if I may just to speak to our motion, I think it's been revealed to me through this conversation, the national competition policy, I think, applies to what we've discussed today, but I believe with what I've heard that with the Caloundra Music Festival, we've got a lot of work to be done, specifically on that particular event, to review it thoroughly, prosecute everything that we've heard today in the context of a review of the Caloundra Music Festival and how that fits into the creative and the music life of the Sunshine Coast going into the future. So I think for today, national competition policy, this is not the instrument with which to examine the benefits or otherwise of the Caloundra Music Festival. We need to look at the whole policy, the recommendations that have been provided to us today, and on balance, without unpacking the whole thing and trying to extract CMF out of that, I feel I will have to support that. But on notice that we are having a comprehensive and detailed review of our music events and the Caloundra Music Festival going into the future. So If I can just put on note or request, whatever I'm allowed to do here, that we make sure that we review Caloundra Music Festival and music events going into the future so that we don't have this situation again, and we're all very clear on what we're achieving for our community and for our music community, the creative arts community, as well as accommodation houses. I think we've heard plenty that the September school holidays are only at about 40 or 50% of current occupancy compared to previous years. The music industry has been devastated by the impact of COVID and restrictions. So this is not the time not to run a music festival of any kind. We should actually be trying to do more of it at the moment. However, I think very timely for Caloundra, for the Sunshine Coast, that we've got this offer and we could hopefully fill up more accommodation beds over that particular weekend. So a unique set of circumstances this year, but in terms of this policy and what's before us today, probably have to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillor Suarez.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support Councillor Law's comments just now, and but I'd like to take it a little bit further than just having it noted that we undertake a good review. I'm not trying to kill the Caloundra Music Festival. I'm just trying to get a more clear and transparent understanding of how it's operating and whether or not it's the correct model. Mr Mayor, and meeting management, would I be able to add or make an amendment to the motion to include a financial and industry review regarding the Caloundra Music Festival to be considered during our review of Caloundra Music Festival in the first quarter of next year? Am I allowed to add that to this motion?
Look, I'll take advice. I think, given we're talking about national competition policy, I'm not sure that's where it should sit. I mean, I think we can give an undertaking, and Mr Laverty may have already done that in terms of stating that there is a planned review. If that needs to start sooner from a council perspective, then we can bring that forward.
Then the reason I raise it, Mr Mayor, is because it clearly, national competition policy clearly applies. Today we're discussing reasons to either apply Code of Competitive Conduct or not. It's taken 13 years. It's taken 2 ordinary meetings for me to raise it, for this to finally be discussed under national competition policy. So I just would like to have confidence that a full, robust financial review will be undertaken into the Caloundra Music Festival financials that will be available to the public. How do I do that?
Well, I think the CEO can take your comments there on board and ensure that that is an item that's addressed with sufficient time to provide the appropriate answers. Remembering, of course, that right at this moment, there are people buying tickets for this year's event.
Yeah, understand that. And we're committed for the next one as well.
You comfortable with that, Madam CEO? That
Through you, Mr Mayor, not that I was here when the Caloundra Music Festival was discussed, but I believe in a previous presentation to Council there was an undertaking to do a review prior to the end of the period of 2022. So that commitment already exists in Council documentation and Council resolution.
You happy with that?
Yep, may I speak to the motion, Mr Mayor?
Sure.
There are 3 reasons why I want this thorough review undertaken in our festivals. Enhanced transparency and disclosure for our community and for our competitors in the festival space. The risk of additional pressure on our rates revenue if the cost for the Caloundra Music Festival continues to escalate. And the reason I wanted to have national competition apply is because it would force council to undertake that financial analysis of the festival environment on the Sunshine Coast and look at better delivery models. I mentioned it's taken me raising it at 2 ordinary meetings for this to finally come to fruition. And if we don't review this. We're just going down this continued rabbit hole, and I don't believe that the benefits are being applied broadly across the region. Yes, to the suppliers, but not to the community. It's a fun festival, and ratepayers in Division 9 are not screaming out for the Caloundra Music Festival to go ahead. They're screaming out for other essential services to be had, and that's why I want a financial review to happen. I'd love to have a better model that delivers festival broadly across the region and have those economic benefits still supporting suppliers, but also supporting other local schools and other local community groups and other accommodation houses across the region. And so for that reason and that reason alone, I won't be supporting today's motion, but I am very grateful that we will have an undertaking to review that event in isolation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Suarez. Councillor Babarowski.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I didn't expect to be speaking to this item today, but I do have and have held the arts portfolio for nearly 10 years. So I feel an obligation to make some comments in defence of the recommendations before us. One, upfront, I'd say I'm very comfortable with this review and the officer's findings. What I would like to acknowledge is Councillor Law's observation of, is this the right time to take a very stringent examination ruler against these events when I had a comment, a report only yesterday, there were 28,000 events cancelled due to the pandemic, arts events, arts festivals and events. That's not a good enough reason, and I do welcome Councillor Suarez's interrogation of the model delivery for the CMF. And I do understand your difficulties in pulling it out of this context. My general observation is that in the time that I've been involved in the CMF and the discussions around it, the arguments have largely been qualitative, not quantitative. And what I mean by that is that we've heard a lot about the economic impacts and trying to put numbers on those things, how many businesses, how many events are local versus this. Qualitatively, I'm absolutely confident that the CMF has been instrumental in positioning the region as a destination that includes a cultural offer that was stronger. And to me, that is very valuable. If I think back before the CMF, before we recognised we needed to step into that space, there wouldn't have been a private sector festival organiser that was prepared to carry the risk in putting that program in that venue, and we did. So we've helped to build, to some extent, and I'll call it a brand, it's much more than that, that has really started to bring an audience to not only Caloundra but to the region, looking for innovative programming. Did we start with that? Not necessarily. But my observation of the Caloundra Music Festival program is that in the latter years, it's really sought to be a fantastic showcase for local talent. It's also looked to how it can leverage the international acts with the local, so that there's been a professional development outcome out of that, which has been, I think, very valuable. So, councillors, without pressing the point too much further, I really think that if you remind yourselves why are we in this space, yes, there are certainly some quantitative outcomes we focus on, but the qualitative, the social, the cultural outcomes are what we really should focus on. And articulating those is really difficult, but it doesn't mean they're less valuable. And I do take a little bit of issue with it being positioned as fun and nice to have. No, we have matured as a community through these events. It is not about light-hearted fun that you could or couldn't have. This community needs to see itself as a creative content creator, not just consuming other people's. And that's what this vehicle does and has done and will do. If we get to a point, and I did like your provocation of the Maleny Folk Festival or the Woodford Folk Festival, and I really am challenging myself, could that step into this space? And I don't know their business model well enough, or their operational model well enough, but the Woodford Folk Festival to me has had enormous support from the community and the council, and would have failed without it, in my view, from what I know. I may be wrong on that, but it's been an incredibly difficult road for them to exist without the investment of the community. So having said that, I'm very pleased with this report. I'm very supportive that at this point in time, I'm supporting the recommendations, but I also support that we should be ever vigilant of can that service be delivered by somebody else better. And that's yet to be determined.
Thank you, Councillor Babarowski. It's probably worth just clarifying that the Woodford Folk Festival is not funded by our council, funded by the Moreton Bay Council. Yeah. It looks like there's no further speakers, so I'm going to go to Councillor Hungerford to close.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to be pretty firm. We've gone off target here today. This is about application of national competition policy. We've looked at it very closely. The staff have been through it with legal advice. We are compliant with the Local Government Act 2009, the regulation in regards to waste and resources management, holiday parks, quarries, and the international broadband submarine cable. Today we're looking at off-street parking and festivals, and it's done holistically. Today we're prosecuting the Clandrook Music Festival on this item, which is completely off tangent. It's gone off topic completely. Council's participation in that comes up next year for review and debate. That's the proper place for it, to look at that one in particular, what Council's involvement is and how we go into the future. This today is about our application of national competition policy, and that covers festivals as a whole. And our application of it's been quite correctly laid out. So I think we've wasted some time here and we've gone off on a topic that is a separate topic to be debated by Council in a different realm next year. Let's stick to where we should be and stick to topic on the matters we're doing in relevance. I support this today. It's been very soundly gone through. And each year we review these to make sure that we're in correct spacing. Because we've been clearly identified, as far as off-street parking goes, there's not much competition there. We're the main ones doing it at the moment. And until we get that grown to the future, and there are other entities starting to play it, then we'll look at the national competition policy, because it will quite correctly apply then. The same with festivals. And what we do with individual ones is our business in another realm. Let's stick to topic. I ask you to support this today. It's very sound. And when we go through and then to next year, individual festivals that we're involved with will become part of a different debate and topic. Let's stick to topic.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. Those in favour of today's recommendation? So, Councillor Babarowski, Councillor Landsberg, Cox, Natoli, Dixon, Hungerford, O'Prey, Jamieson. Those opposed? Councillor Law and Councillor Suarez. The motion's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Paul and Simon. Item 8.5 is the exception under Local Government Regulation 2012 for disposal of the commercial lease. Andrew Tout is here to give us a presentation. You will note, councillors, that there is a confidential attachment, so if we need to go into that, we may need to move a motion. Thanks, Councillor Dixon. Mr Tout?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, councillors. So item 8.5 is a report seeking an exception under section 236 of the Local Government Regulations, disposal of interest in land at 11 Harris Lane, Buderim, and allow a commercial lease to be registered over that site. 3 is council freehold land located at 11 Harris Lane and is adjacent to the Buderim Forest Parkland. The restaurant there trades as Harry's on Buderim, and the lease is legally described as Lease A, SP 248167. The current operator, we can go backwards. The current operator is Sugar Snap Proprietary Limited, and they have a current lease with council expiring on the 31st of March next year, so 2022. The lease commenced in April 2012. It was a 10-year term, 5 years was a 5-year option, which was executed. And the tenant has approached council for a new lease to allow them to continue to trade. The property management branch officers have engaged an independent registered valuer to establish the market rental and lease terms, and it's proposed to offer the tenant a further 10-year term at the market assessed rental, allow them to continue to trade. So the officer's recommendation is for council to resolve that an exception to dispose of an interest in land other than by tender or auction applies because the disposal is to an existing tenant. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Andrew. Someone happy to move? Councillor Hungerford. Seconder, Councillor Cox. Would you like to open, Councillor Hungerford?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is fairly straightforward. It's a current leasee on a premises of council. Has been there for many years. The term's coming up and it is seeking a renewal of that. The tenant has approached council's property management branch seeking council's agreement to enter into a new lease agreement beyond the current expiry date to allow them to continue to trade from the premises. And I believe that expires in March.
March next year, correct? That's right, through the ban.
Council's property management brand has sought an expert opinion of a registered valuer to establish the new lease agreement terms and determine their current annual rental in accordance with the current market conditions. It is proposed to offer the tenant a further 10-year term at market assessment rental rate. I see this is fair and relevant. Existing tenant has been a very good tenant from what I can see, and to give them an extension on that I see as only reasonable and relevant, and I fully support this today.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. Councillor Natoli.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support this motion as well. But I just thought I'd give some history. This house used to belong to Eric Moses' family, and Eric Moses was a very loved employee of council, unfortunately passed away. But just so for those councillors that didn't know the history, this house was brought in piece by piece, restored, and it's been an incredible asset for the community to have that house there.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Landsberg.
Thank you. Through the Chair. Just like to ask a question about, obviously, the venue. My wife and I went up there last weekend for the first time, Councillor Ted, and did the Buderim Forest Walk, and it was also amazing. But I did notice, I mean, lots of traffic there going in and out, and lots of people walking into the falls and having a swim. But the ability to sort of purchase light refreshments, I mean, the restaurant runs on limited, hours of operation. I think they go from lunch Wednesday to Sunday and dinner Thursday to Saturdays. Is there a potential into the future to activate that site for, whether it's an opportunity for people that do visit that walkway there early, early mornings and things like that? Because that was just something that my wife made a comment about when we were walking through there. But apart from that, fully supportive.
We haven't looked at that aspect, but we mean light refreshments. I'm not sure whether you mean alcohol. I'm not going down that path, because people do picnic there, and the thing has always been BYO, bring your own picnic here and refreshments. I'm not sure whether that's something the premises there would like to look at into the future, but they only do hours of operation for dining. It's mainly evenings, and I think they do some lunch times as well. But it's an area for people to explore up through there. And the other thing is, if you do provide that, then you've got to look at the rubbish side of things, and it's a very neat and tidy area. And if people start leaving rubbish there, if you start selling things and you end up with bottles and cans and everything in the creek line, I'd find that a bit of an issue as well.
If there are no further speakers, would you like to close? Councillor Hungerford, you've done. Okay, we'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Item 8.6 is the exception under the local government regulation for the disposal of a property being lot 11 on RP 883859 at Nambour. I invite Alex to give us a presentation. Thank you, Alex.
Morning, councillors. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So, council owns a freehold property of 102 square metres on Curry Street in Nambour, legally described as Lot 11 on RP 883859. The property is attached to the Nambour train station. The site is improved with a 1960s freestanding brick building and has a community hall in it. Suncare Community Services currently hold the licence over the site until March 2022. Queensland Rail directly approached Council in February regarding the potential acquisition of the site. The request came about due to the impact that Cross River Rail has had on Queensland Rail's operations. QR now requires additional sites to support its business operations and provide train crew facilities. Strategic Property and QR have engaged a joint valuation of the property to determine its market value. That valuation was at $175,000. If Council does agree to dispose of the property, it would be in accordance with this valuation, with all the proceeds to be spent on community facilities in the Nambour area. It is important to note that Queensland Rail has the power, through the Department of Transport and Main Roads, to resume the property should Council choose not to dispose of it via negotiation. Suncare, which is the community group that currently occupy the site, is aware of QR's interest and have already been working with Council's community development team on finding a replacement property. Please note that QR has also agreed to pay Suncare's reasonable relocation costs associated with the move, and QR has also agreed to pay any costs associated with the sale for Council as well. So as a result, we are seeking an exemption from Council to dispose of the subject property to Queensland Rail. The Local Government Regulation 2012 provides that a disposal other than by auction or tender may occur if an exemption applies. Section 236 provides for an exemption if the disposal is to a government agency, in this instance, Queensland Rail. Any questions?
Thank you. Someone to move? Councillor Law, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Babarowski. Would you like to open, please, Councillor Law?
May I just ask a question first?
Of course.
Thank you. With regard to the expiry of the current users of the building, March of next year, do you have an update of where we're at in finding an alternate location for them?
Yeah, so Suncare is going to look at the old drill hall in Nambour. That site does actually have better amenities and would suit their uses a lot better. So we're going to see if they agree to move there. If not, they obviously still have that license until March, and we'll work with them to try and find a replacement property.
Is it correct that Queensland Rail are offering to help with their relocation expenses and so on?
Yes, they will. So as if they were doing it under the Acquisition of Land Act, they will pay for reasonable relocation costs.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So through you, Mr. Mayor, to speak in support of the motion, it sounds that QR, one way or another, are going to acquire this property either through this process or some compulsory purchase down the track. As long as we've got those assurances that Suncare, the current users of the space, will be found an alternate that is the same as or better than, and knowing the building, I think it's most likely it will be better than. So obviously I would seek your support today to enable this to happen, because I think this is the better way of going through this process that will inevitably occur one way or another. So I will certainly give it my support, and as the local councillor with that, urge your support as well today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillor Babarowski.
Very quick question, Mr. Mayor. The old drill hall, is that at the showgrounds?
No, it's not. It's a different location.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. So the old drill hall does have better amenities than obviously the current site. So it is envisaged that it would be a better location.
All right, I was a bit misled by the additional information which says council does not have any other community facilities in Nambour outside the showgrounds at present, and then says the drill hall would be better.
Yeah. Maybe I'm mistaken, but I think the old drill hall isn't at the showgrounds.
Okay.
We can go back and check
either way, there's an alternative location that suits. Thanks very much.
Richard Park.
Okay. No further speakers. Do you want to close, Councillor Law? Not necessary. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillors, our final item is 8.7, the Queensland Audit Office, second interim management report, and I invite Janine Weeks to give us a presentation. Thanks, Janine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good morning, everyone. So this is for our second interim audit report for the financial year. And it covered the period March to May, so the auditors have already examined all of our transactions and processes up until Feb. The auditors are actually on site right now conducting their final audit of the financial statements. So this report, all audit reports are first presented to the audit committee, and then legislation dictates that we present it to the next ordinary meeting of council. So in terms of the results of the second interim audit, overall, our internal control assessment is partially effective. This hasn't changed from their last audit in March. All financial reporting issues are on track. They haven't identified anything to date. In terms of areas of audit significance, they are on track. And what they are items that have a significant risk due to their size or complexity. Assets due to their size and complexity. Our region shaping projects are all quite unique. Our infrastructure charges are quite large. So at the moment, there are no issues with those either. Other matters, now they are really business improvement opportunities that council can decide to take on or not. We always do. They're all on track and they've all been resolved subject to audit verification. And our milestones are on track at this point. So in terms of critical dates, as I said, the auditors are conducting their final audit right now. From there, we'll have the Mayor and CEO sign the statements and we'll submit them formally to the Auditor General. The statements will then be adopted as part of the annual report in November. Any issues identified during the audit are managed through the Audit Committee process. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Janine. We'll get someone to move first. Councillor Hungerford. Seconded Councillor Natoli. Would you like to open, Councillor Hungerford?
Through you, Mr Mayor. I think Janine's covered most of it, so I won't go through the technical detail. Council has a statutory obligation to prepare general purpose financial statements on an annual basis. Accumulating in an audit certification in October before publication in Council's annual report. Now, following the audit report, the Queensland Audit Office provide their closing report, certification and financial management report in October 2021, which includes their audit opinion as well as the summary and status of any issues identified during the course of the audit. Now, pleasingly, Council has consistently received a non-modified audit option, meaning the financial statements in all material aspects give true and fair view of Council's financial position, financial performance and cash flows for the relevant year. And they comply with the applicable legislation and Australian accounting standards. Now, was it 12 in a row we've had so far? I'm looking forward to number 13. I'm sure we all are. So based on the results of the testing completed to date and the resolution of prior year's issues, the Queensland Audit Office have confirmed that Council's internal control environment is partially effective, meaning that while the outstanding matters are still being addressed, the environment supports an audit strategy that can rely on these controls. That's a very strong position to be in. I'm fairly confident that number 13 will be achieved. That's good work from the Finance Department. I actually congratulate them. And putting that, I know how extensive it is sitting on the Audit Committee and looking at the papers you go through. It is large. The assets, our finances, our major projects, pulling all that together and getting it in a form that the Auditor General can see is complete and gives a fair position of Council is a major task. So compliments to the Finance Department for what they're doing there. Because getting that from the Auditor General is not an easy task. I know how much work goes into it. So full credit to the Finance Department and to Council for giving the guidance and the resources and following through with their budgets each year and being realistic about what we commit to. It all comes together. We've got to be on a record, I tell you. So for local governments, I'd love to know who else has had that many unmodified audits in a row. I don't think anyone has. But let's keep it going.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. If there are no further speakers, you don't need to close, Councillor. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's Unanimously passed. Thank you. Councillors, thank you, Janine. That brings us to the end of today's meeting. So I'll close the meeting at 10:50.